Hi there, my name's Anna and welcome back to my art channel. Today we're working in my sketchbook and we're drawing a botanical painting. This is going to be a succulent, and as you can see I've masked off the sides of my sketchbook page just to give me a nice clean border at the end, just to frame the picture a little bit and also help me not mess up my page too much when I use a lot of water. And I'm using a mechanical pencil and just roughly sketching out the leaves of the succulent, and they don't have to be perfectly exact as in the reference because it's a plant, and if it's just roughly the same, people will know what it is and it will look nice. It's not like a portrait where every little hair has to be in the right place to recognize the person. So that's one reason why I like drawing plants, it's just a little bit more relaxed. Sketching in those last few little leaves. And now I'm getting out my set of watercolors. I'm using my little travel set here, so I don't have a huge variety of colors, which oftentimes makes things a little bit easier. And usually such a small set has a decent variety of colors to be able to do a lot of mixing. And here you can see I'm using ultramarine blue, I'm using my burnt sienna to get a very neutral tone, and I'm also adding some viridian green to add a little bit of green. And I keep mixing my dark tone again and again, and it's not quite the same all the time, which is nice because it just kind of gives a bit of variety in otherwise a fairly plain background. And I'm using my silver black velvet round brush here, and later on you'll see I'll switch over to my Waterbrush now and again. But this brush is very nice for watercolor painting. It holds a lot of moisture, a lot of paint, and you can draw fairly large areas. As you can see here, I'm wetting my petal fairly easily with that round belly of the paintbrush, but you can also add a lot of fine detail with the fine tip of it. And I'm working wet into wet here. I've wetted the petal and now I'm popping in some blue tones and some green tones, a little bit of brownish red around the edge, and because it's all wet, it's flowing into each other. You just have to make sure that you work fairly quick when you're doing this, which isn't really a problem because these are just small areas I'm working on at a time, which is a nice thing about painting plants because you can work on one area at a time and let those colors blend into each other. Usually I'm adding some more pigment towards the base of the leaf and the middle, because there's this crevice in the middle. Don't know what it's called properly, the vein of the leaf maybe. What you can also do is work wet on dry and then use a damp clean paintbrush to soften out the edges, so you don't have any harsh edges, so you get a fairly similar effect there. So I'm kind of switching between those two techniques, either just adding the paint wet on dry and then blending it out with my paintbrush, or first wetting the petal and then let the colors blend into each other naturally. And I'm always using similar mixes of colors for these petals, not for petals, but the leaves. So it's ultramarine blue. I think I probably also used some of the cooler blue I have in that set. Sometimes a little bit of viridian green and a little bit of a cool red around the edges. And you can also see the petals that are more in the shade are a lot darker than the ones that are hit by direct sunlight. You can also use your paintbrush to lift some colour up when you think you've added a little bit too much. just use a clean, moist brush and just kind of suck some more colour up and wipe it off on a paper towel. That way you can kind of direct which area is a bit lighter and a bit darker. A lot of these leaves are fairly light, so I have to make sure that you can differentiate them, that I have some contrast there between the leaves so you can see where one starts and the other one ends. So over here I've added a little bit more green and a lot more pigment, and I'm using my Waterbrush now. And a Waterbrush is basically a brush that has its own tank. It's usually a synthetic brush. They're usually fairly cheap and you can use them when you're out and about. You don't need to have a separate jug of water. And you just can kind of use some pressure on the brush to increase the water flow, but there will always be a bit of water flow coming out of there. And for some reason I just felt like this worked very well with the technique that I was trying to use here. It's not perfect for the finest detail, but you can get a really nice painting with just using a water brush. And it worked very well on this painting in any case. Over to the left, there is more of the leaves are more in shadow. That's why they're a lot darker. And there's also a bit more green going on in the left-hand side. Now I'm working on the center of the plant, where I have a lot of little leaves, and I have to make sure I have a little bit of contrast there so you can see the detail that's going on here. And you might have noticed throughout the painting process I was mostly not working on leaves that are right beside each other, so that I could let one area dry before I painted on something that was next to that area, to avoid any paint flowing into each other where I don't want that to happen. And basically my painting process is finished at this point, and I decided to get out my colored pencils and just refine this drawing a little bit more. And that's a good thing to do, or those are two mediums you can work well with each other. First watercolor, and then on top using some colored pencils just to kind of smooth some areas out, because watercolor can have some harsh edges, or just to add some contrast, refine a little bit more, because with colored pencils of course you have a lot more control. It is of course a slower medium, so using the watercolor first makes perfect sense, because you can add a lot of color to your page very quickly with watercolor. Basically using the same colors as before. I'm using different shades of blue, some of them a little warmer, some a little cooler, and I'm using a very opaque soft white to add some lighter areas, or to lighten up some areas. And here, this is probably a Prussian blue that I was using there to darken some areas, a little bit of red to add some more of that cool red on the edges of the plant. And I'm just kind of intensifying my contrast here a lot as well. I mean, to be honest, it's not a huge difference to the way it was before I used the colored pencils, but it's a little bit nicer, I think. And that soft white pencil you can also use to blend the colors that are underneath, if you've already added some layers of colored pencil. And for that you use a lot of pressure then. So that's basically it for this drawing. I hope you enjoyed following me along, and I hope to see you again soon in one of my next videos. Take care and bye bye!